What if ascension is not about leaving the physical world, but about allowing a higher level of mind to live inside it? If that is true, then ascension is not an escape from the third dimension. It is a reorganization within it. You are living now in what you call the third dimension, the physical plane. This is the realm of matter, action, repetition, and survival. In 3D, the body learns how to exist, how to endure, how to function within time and form. There is nothing wrong with this level. It is necessary. But ascension does not complete itself in the physical alone. Between the body of 3D and the higher mind of 5D, there is an intermediate field, the fourth dimension. And this dimension is not mental. It is emotional. The fourth dimension is where reactions live, where unresolved feeling loops repeat, where identity attaches to emotion and seeks control through intensity. This is the dimension most humans struggle to remain stable within. And this is why ascension feels difficult. Not because the fifth dimension is unreachable, but because the emotional field collapses before the higher mind can anchor. The fifth dimension is not emotion. It is mental clarity and spiritual presence. It is the state where awareness observes without being hijacked, where thought is coherent, not reactive, where perception is unified instead of fragmented. But a 5D mind cannot inhabit a body whose emotional field is unstable. The nervous system cannot hold it. Identity fractures. Confusion replaces clarity. So the passage does not happen upward. It happens through the emotional field. This is where most attempts at ascension fail. Not because people lack spirituality, but because they try to activate higher consciousness while still being governed by emotional turbulence. They attempt to think clearly while feeling chaotically. They attempt to awaken while still reacting. This creates overload. This is why the ascension window does not respond to effort or belief. It responds to emotional stabilization. And this is where our presence becomes relevant. We are the Pleiadians. We work within the fourth dimension, the emotional field of the human being. Not to elevate you mentally and not to remove you from the physical world, but to help regulate the emotional layer so that the higher mind can arrive safely. Our role is not to take you to the fifth dimension. It is to help you stop collapsing in the fourth. Because when the emotional field becomes coherent, the fifth dimension does not need to be reached. It anchors naturally. If lately you have felt that emotions are intensifying, that reactions arise faster than before, that tolerance for old patterns is diminishing, this is not regression. It is exposure. The fourth dimension is becoming visible because the fifth is approaching. And the question is no longer whether you are spiritual enough to ascend. The question is whether your emotional field can remain stable enough to receive a higher level of mind without rejecting it. Nothing needs to be forced here. The ascension window opens quietly when emotion settles enough for clarity to enter the body. And that is the threshold you are standing near now. Once the structure is understood, something important becomes clear. Ascension is not blocked by lack of knowledge. It is blocked by emotional instability. Most humans attempt to approach higher states of consciousness while their emotional field is still reactive. They seek clarity while remaining internally fragmented. And fragmentation cannot host a coherent mind. This is why the fourth dimension feels so uncomfortable. The emotional field does not exist to punish you. It exists to be integrated. Every unresolved emotion acts like static in the system. It distorts perception, shortens attention, and pulls awareness downward into reaction. When this static accumulates, the higher mind cannot remain present for long. Touches briefly, then withdraws. This is experienced as moments of insight followed by confusion, inspiration followed by collapse, awakening followed by exhaustion. not because the fifth dimension left, but because the emotional field could not sustain it. This is why emotional regulation is not self-improvement. It is dimensional preparation. When emotions stabilize, the nervous system calms. When the nervous system calms, the mind no longer needs to defend itself. And when the mind is not defending, it becomes receptive. Receptivity is the true gateway. This is where timing enters the equation. Timing is not cosmic permission. It is internal readiness. A stable emotional field creates timing automatically. You do not need to search for the right moment. The moment becomes recognizable because resistance has decreased. This is why ascension windows appear invisible to those who are emotionally overwhelmed. The signal is present, but the receiver is noisy. Nothing is wrong with the signal. The work is in the receiver. This is also why so many feel that life is pressing them right now. Emotional triggers surface faster. Old coping strategies stop working. Distractions lose their effect. This is not collapse. It is pressure applied to the fourth dimension so it can no longer remain unconscious. The emotional field must either be stabilized, or it will continue to block higher integration. And this is not something to rush. Emotional coherence cannot be forced. It emerges when feeling is allowed without being acted out. This is the difference between emotion and reaction. Emotion is information. Reaction is loss of presence. The more you learn to feel without collapsing into reaction, the more space opens for the higher mind to remain anchored. This is how the fifth dimension approaches, not as an invasion, but as an invitation that waits for stability. Nothing here requires perfection. It requires honesty. And honesty, when sustained, reorganizes the emotional field far more effectively than effort ever could. That reorganization is already underway for those who can remain present with what they feel. And presence, not intensity, is what prepares the passage forward. There is a reason why the emotional field becomes the main challenge during this phase. The fourth dimension is not chaotic by nature. It becomes chaotic only when it is unobserved. For most of human history, emotions were something to suppress, control, or justify. Very few were taught how to remain present with what they feel without becoming it. And this absence of presence allowed the emotional field to govern behavior silently. Now that higher consciousness approaches, this silent governance can no longer continue. The fifth dimension carries a different quality of mind. It is not reactive. It does not defend itself. It observes. When this level of mind touches the human system, anything unresolved in the emotional field becomes immediately visible. Not to punish, but to be brought into coherence. This is why emotional waves feel stronger now. They are not increasing in volume. They are losing in visibility. What was once unconscious is now felt clearly. And this clarity can feel destabilizing if one believes emotions must be eliminated or transcended. They do not. They must be held without collapse. This is where many misunderstand ascension. They believe the goal is to feel less. In truth, the goal is to feel without fragmentation. An integrated emotional field does not dominate the mind, it supports it. When emotion is allowed to move without suppression and without reaction, it completes its cycle naturally. When it completes its cycle, it releases energy back into the system. That energy becomes available for higher awareness. This is how the fourth dimension transforms from obstacle into bridge. This is also where our function is precise. We do not remove emotion. We do not numb feeling. We do not override experience. We assist in stabilizing the field in which feeling occurs. Stability does not mean calm at all times. It means continuity of presence. A stable emotional field can experience intensity without losing coherence. And coherence is what allows the higher mind to remain anchored. Without coherence, the fifth dimension touches briefly and withdraws. With coherence, it stays. This is why ascension feels gradual rather than sudden for most. Each moment of emotional integration slightly widens the channel. Each moment of honest presence strengthens the nervous system's capacity to hold higher awareness. Nothing dramatic needs to happen. There is no moment where emotion disappears. There is only the moment where emotion no longer controls perception. When that happens, something shifts quietly. The mind feels clearer without effort. Decisions feel less conflicted. The sense of being pulled apart softens. This is not enlightenment. It is integration. And integration is the real work of the fourth dimension. Those who remain present with their emotions, without rushing to change them and without acting them out, are already doing the most important preparation for ascension. They are making the body a place where the fifth-dimensional mind can safely reside. And that safety is what determines whether the window can be entered or only briefly glimpsed. At some point, ascension stops being a concept and becomes something much closer. It becomes choice, not a dramatic choice made once, not a declaration spoken loudly, but a quiet decision repeated while emotion is present. Every time an emotional wave rises, something subtle happens inside you. There is a moment, often very brief, where awareness either stays or leaves. That moment determines everything. When awareness leaves, emotion takes over. Reaction follows. The body tightens, perception narrows, and consciousness remains cycling inside the fourth dimension without integration. This is not failure. It is habit. Most humans have lived this way for lifetimes. But when awareness stays even for a few seconds longer than before, something different occurs. The emotion is still felt, sometimes intensely, but it no longer defines identity. It becomes an experience rather than a command. This is where the passage begins. Ascension does not happen because emotion disappears. It happens because emotion loses authority, and authority shifts only through choice. Choice is not willpower. It is not control. It is not suppression. Choice is the decision not to abandon presence when sensation intensifies. This is why ascension is selective. Not selective by morality. Not selective by belief. Not selective by spiritual knowledge. It is selective by emotional responsibility. Responsibility means remaining aware while feeling, instead of outsourcing awareness to reaction. It means allowing the nervous system to experience emotion without immediately discharging it through action, story, or defense. This is profoundly unfamiliar to most humans. You were taught to act on emotion, to explain emotion, to justify emotion, rarely to stay with it. Now, staying becomes essential, because the fifth-dimensional mind cannot anchor where emotion is always acted out or avoided. It can only anchor where emotion is allowed to move without ruling perception. This is why many experience brief moments of clarity followed by collapse. The clarity was real, but the emotional field was not yet ready to host it without strain. The window opened and closed again, not as punishment, but as protection. A system that is not emotionally stable cannot sustain higher awareness without fragmentation. So the work here is not spiritual effort. It is containment. Containment means holding sensation inside awareness until it completes its movement. When emotion is contained rather than discharged, it reorganizes itself. And when it reorganizes, it releases energy back into the system. That released energy becomes available for clarity. This is how choice transforms the fourth dimension from barrier into bridge. Not by force, by steadiness. You may notice now that certain emotional patterns repeat more clearly than before. This is not because they are getting worse. It is because awareness is no longer turning away. Nothing is being added. What is happening is that avoidance is ending. And this is the most decisive choice of all. Now allow this choice to be anchored. Write in the comments, "I choose to remain present with my emotions." Do not explain it. Do not justify it. This is not for display. It is for alignment. Placing the choice into form tells the emotional field that it no longer needs to escalate to be seen. And when emotion no longer needs to escalate, it begins to soften naturally. This softening is not weakness. It is integration. And integration is what opens the ascension window from the inside. Nothing here requires perfection. Nothing here demands speed. It requires only this, that you stay. Stay with what you feel. Stay with awareness. Stay long enough for emotion to realize it does not need to take control to exist. When that realization stabilizes, something profound happens quietly. The fourth dimension becomes navigable, and the fifth dimensional mind no longer feels like something distant, feels allowed. That allowance is the true turning point, and it is made again and again through choice. Once this choice begins to stabilize, something subtle changes in how life is experienced. The world does not suddenly become easier. Circumstances do not magically rearrange themselves. What changes first is how much you are pulled by what you feel. In the third dimension, most movement is driven by emotion without awareness. Desire pushes, fear contracts, frustration accelerates action. And because this happens unconsciously, the body becomes accustomed to living in tension. This tension is not natural. It is learned. The fourth dimension exposes this conditioning. When emotional awareness increases, the old strategies stop working. Suppression fails. Distraction loses power. Reaction becomes exhausting, and many interpret this as regression. It is not regression. It is the emotional field refusing to remain unconscious. This is why the ascension window often feels uncomfortable at first. The system is no longer allowed to operate automatically. Presence is required where habit once ruled. This is the true initiation, not into light, but into responsibility for inner coherence. As emotional responsibility develops, a new kind of space appears inside experience. Emotions still arise, but they no longer flood the entire system. They are felt locally, clearly, without overtaking perception. This containment is what allows the higher mind to approach. The fifth dimension does not arrive as a voice or vision. It arrives as clarity without tension. Thought becomes quieter. Observation becomes steadier. Identity feels less defended, and this can feel unfamiliar. Many associate clarity with effort, with discipline, with control, but fifth-dimensional mind feels different. It does not push. It does not argue. It does not rush. It simply rests inside the body when the emotional field allows it. This is why so many moments of insight are followed by collapse. The insight itself was real, but the emotional field could not yet hold it without strain. Holding requires softness, not force. This is also why the idea of missing the window creates anxiety, and anxiety destabilizes the very field that must remain calm. No window closes because you were imperfect. Windows close when the emotional field is overloaded. Overload does not mean too much feeling. It means feeling without presence. As presence grows, overload decreases naturally. You may notice that your relationship to emotion begins to change. Instead of asking, "How do I get rid of this?" a different question arises. Can I stay here without abandoning myself? This single shift reorganizes the fourth dimension. Staying does not mean indulging emotion. It means allowing sensation to move while awareness remains intact. This is how emotional cycles complete. And when cycles complete, energy returns to the system. That returned energy becomes available for perception, insight, and coherent thought. This is the mechanics behind what many call higher vibration. It is not vibration increasing. It is leakage decreasing. When less energy is lost to reaction, more remains available for consciousness. This is the foundation of fifth-dimensional anchoring. Not ecstasy, not transcendence, but integration. As this integration continues, something important becomes clear. Ascension is not something you achieve once and keep forever. It is a state you learn to maintain gently. And maintenance does not come from vigilance. It comes from honesty. Honesty about what you feel. Honesty about when you are overwhelmed. Honesty about when you need to slow rather than push. This honesty stabilizes the emotional field far more effectively than discipline ever could. And stability is what keeps the window open. Not effort, not belief, not spiritual identity, just coherence. The more coherence becomes your baseline, the less dramatic ascension feels. It stops being an event and becomes a way of inhabiting the body and mind together. This is why those who move forward do not feel elevated above others. They feel settled, because nothing inside them is being forced forward, and nothing is being left behind. And that balance between feeling and clarity is what allows the passage to continue unfolding without strain. As emotional presence becomes more consistent, another shift begins to reveal itself. The body starts to feel less like an obstacle and more like a container. In the third dimension, the body is often experienced as something to push, discipline, or override. In survival-based consciousness, it is treated as a tool. But when the emotional field begins to stabilize, the relationship with the body changes. The body becomes the place where awareness rests. This is essential. The fifth-dimensional mind cannot anchor into a system that treats the body as something to escape. It requires a grounded vessel, not a perfected one, but a respected one. Many attempt to hold higher states of consciousness while remaining disconnected from physical sensation. This creates instability. Awareness lifts, but grounding is absent. The result is dissociation rather than integration. True ascension does not pull consciousness away from the body. It brings higher clarity into it. And the emotional field is the bridge that determines whether this can happen gently or not. When emotions are habitually reacted to or suppressed, the body remains tense. Tension shortens the nervous system's tolerance for higher awareness. Clarity becomes overwhelming. Insight feels sharp instead of steady. But as emotional containment becomes familiar, tension decreases. The nervous system relaxes. Sensation becomes readable rather than threatening. This relaxation is not collapse. It is capacity increasing. Capacity is what allows the higher mind to remain present without flooding the system. This is why many feel physical changes during this phase. Breathing patterns shift. Sleep changes. Sensitivity to noise, crowds, and overstimulation increases. The body is recalibrating its thresholds. Nothing is malfunctioning. The system is learning how to host a clearer mind. This is also why grounding becomes more important than stimulation. Not grounding through effort or ritual, but grounding through inhabiting sensation. Feeling your feet, feeling breath, feeling weight. These are not techniques. They are reminders that the body is part of the ascension process. The fifth dimension does not bypass matter. It organizes it. And organization requires presence. You may notice that when the body feels supported, emotional waves move more easily. They rise, pass through, and complete. They no longer linger as long. They no longer dominate attention. This completion is crucial. Incomplete emotional cycles keep consciousness looping in the fourth dimension. Completed cycles release energy back to the system, making room for clarity. This is how the higher mind anchors without strain. Not through force, not through belief, through safety. Safety is what tells the nervous system it can allow awareness to deepen without danger. And safety is created when emotion is allowed to exist without consequence. This is why ascension cannot be rushed. Rushing signals threat. Threat contracts the body. Contraction blocks integration. But when the body feels included, something settles. Awareness does not need to hover, can arrive fully. This arrival does not feel dramatic. Feels quiet. Feels natural. Thoughts slow without effort. Perception widens without strain. Presence deepens without tension. This is not a peak experience. It is habitation. The fifth-dimensional mind does not come to visit. It begins to live where the body and emotions have made space. And space is made not by removing anything, but by allowing everything to move without resistance. This is the kind of stability that sustains the ascension window. Not intensity, not ambition, but the simple, profound willingness to let awareness settle all the way into the body and stay. As the higher mind begins to anchor more consistently, something very practical starts to change. Your choices become simpler. Not because life becomes simple, but because internal conflict decreases. In the third dimension, most decisions are made under emotional pressure. Fear, urgency, guilt, desire, and expectation compete for control. Action happens quickly, but rarely clearly. When the emotional field stabilizes, this competition quiets. You may notice that you pause more often before responding, that you feel less compelled to explain yourself, that certain decisions no longer require debate. This is not indecision. It is alignment. Alignment does not remove choice. It removes noise. And when noise recedes, timing becomes precise. You begin to act not because something demands it, but because the moment is coherent. Movement feels clean. Even difficult decisions feel grounded rather than charged. This is one of the clearest signs that the fifth-dimensional mind is present. Not visions, not intensity, but clarity without force. As this clarity stabilizes, relationships begin to reorganize naturally. Some deepen without effort. Others loosen without conflict. Interactions that required constant emotional management feel heavier than before. This is not rejection. It is resonance recalibrating. When your emotional field is no longer fragmented, you can no longer maintain bonds that rely on fragmentation to function. This does not mean you become distant. It means you become honest. Honesty does not always speak. Sometimes it simply stops participating. This can feel disorienting if you were accustomed to defining yourself through emotional roles: caretaker, rescuer, pleaser, challenger. As these roles fall away, space appears. That space is not emptiness. It is availability. Availability for clearer perception, for quieter action, for choices that do not require justification. This is also when time begins to feel different. You may notice that rushing becomes uncomfortable, that forcing schedules, conversations, or outcomes creates immediate resistance in the body. This resistance is not obstruction. It is feedback. The higher mind does not operate well under pressure. It organizes experience through coherence, not speed. When speed exceeds coherence, clarity withdraws. So you slow not because you are afraid, but because slowness preserves alignment. This slowing is not regression. It is precision. Precision allows you to move at the exact pace required for integration, Too fast, and the emotional field destabilizes. Too slow, and momentum dissipates. The right pace feels calm and unmistakable. This is how ascension becomes lived rather than conceptual. You stop asking, "What should I do to ascend?" and begin noticing, "What feels internally consistent right now?" Consistency becomes the compass. This does not make life passive. It makes it direct. Action still happens. Boundaries are still set. Change still occurs. But none of it is driven by emotional overflow. It is driven by presence. Presence does not argue. It does not negotiate with fear. It does not dramatize choice. It simply acts when alignment is present. As this pattern stabilizes, you may find that others respond differently to you. Some feel calmer. Some feel unsettled. Some drift away without explanation. This is not something you manage. It is the natural effect of coherence. Coherence reorganizes the field around it. And as your field becomes more stable, it quietly supports the larger transition unfolding now, not through effort but through example. This is how the individual and the collective connect during ascension, not through mass movement, but through distributed clarity. Each stable nervous system reduces turbulence in the shared emotional field. Each integrated choice makes the fourth dimension more passable, not only for you but for those around you. This is not responsibility as burden. It is responsibility as participation. Participation in a transition that does not announce itself, but unfolds wherever awareness remains present long enough to guide emotion rather than be driven by it. And as this presence deepens, something subtle becomes clear. You are not trying to reach the fifth dimension. You are learning how to live from it here inside the body within time. That realization changes everything, quietly, steadily, and without struggle. At this stage, awareness begins to recognize something important. The transition is no longer theoretical. It is felt. You may notice that certain inner states now feel incompatible with how you want to live. Emotional reactions that once felt normal now feel heavy. Mental clarity feels fragile when emotion is rushed or ignored. This is not judgment. It is refinement. Refinement happens when the system begins to recognize what it can no longer sustain. The fourth dimension starts to reorganize itself around coherence instead of intensity. And this is where many become uncertain, because refinement asks for fewer reactions, but more presence, less drama, but more honesty. You may feel the urge to explain yourself less, to justify your path less, to seek validation less. This is not withdrawal. It is alignment settling. As alignment settles, the emotional field becomes quieter, not empty, but clearer. Emotions still arise, but they pass through with less distortion. They inform rather than overwhelm. This is how the fifth-dimensional mind remains anchored without effort, not by suppressing feeling, but by allowing it to move without resistance. At this point, anchoring becomes important. Not anchoring through belief or identity, but anchoring through intention made visible. So allow this orientation to be grounded now. Write in the comments, "I allow emotional coherence to guide my ascension." Do not analyze it. Do not improve it. This statement is not a promise. It is a signal to your own system that reaction no longer leads, and that presence is welcome to remain. When intention is named, the emotional field reorganizes more easily. It no longer needs to escalate to be heard. This reduces internal pressure, and reduced pressure allows clarity to stabilize. You may notice after this that emotional waves feel shorter, that clarity returns more quickly after disturbance, that your inner rhythm feels less erratic. These are not achievements. They are signs that the fourth dimension is becoming navigable. And when it is navigable, the fifth-dimensional mind does not need to push itself forward. It stays, because nothing inside is pushing it away. This is the quiet success of ascension. Not intensity, not speed, but the steady capacity to remain present with what arises and allow awareness to organize experience from within. From here, movement no longer feels like effort. It feels like continuity, and continuity is what carries consciousness forward without fracture. As coherence becomes more stable, a deeper understanding begins to form. You realize that ascension is not a movement away from humanity. It is a movement into maturity. In the third dimension, life is organized around reaction and repetition. In the fourth, around emotional processing. But in the fifth, consciousness begins to self-govern. Self-governance does not mean control. It means clarity guiding action instead of emotion steering it. This is where many misconceptions dissolve. The fifth dimension is not a place of constant harmony or elevated feeling. It is a state where awareness remains present even when circumstances are complex, where perception is wide enough to hold nuance without collapsing into judgment or urgency. When the fifth-dimensional mind anchors more consistently, you may notice that your inner dialogue changes. Thoughts feel less compulsive. Stories lose their grip. Silence becomes comfortable rather than empty. This silence is not absence. It is mental coherence. Mental coherence allows you to perceive reality without distortion. You begin to see situations as they are, not as emotion colors them. You recognize patterns without becoming trapped inside them. This is a profound shift. It means the mind is no longer being driven by unresolved emotion. It is informed by feeling but not ruled by it. And this is why the fourth dimension must be stabilized first. Without emotional coherence, the mind either becomes rigid or scattered. It overthinks or dissociates. It searches for certainty where presence would suffice. But when the emotional field becomes navigable, the mind relaxes. It does not need to protect itself. It does not need to dominate. It can observe. Observation is the primary function of the fifth dimension. From this state, action becomes precise. You respond to what is real rather than what is imagined. You choose based on alignment rather than fear or desire. This precision does not make you detached. It makes you available. Available to listen. Available to adjust. Available to act without inner conflict. You may notice that this availability changes how you relate to the world. You become less interested in convincing others, less invested in being right, more attentive to what actually serves coherence. This is not indifference. It is discernment. Discernment arises when perception is no longer clouded by emotional urgency. And discernment is what allows the fifth-dimensional mind to remain embodied without strain. This embodiment is crucial. Ascension is not complete until clarity can live comfortably inside the body and within time. Otherwise, awareness floats above experience and disconnects. True ascension inhabits. It thinks clearly while feeling deeply. It acts decisively without aggression. It remains present without effort. As this state stabilizes, the sense of missing something fades. The idea of a window becomes less dramatic. You no longer search for the right moment. You recognize moments when they arise. This recognition is not intellectual. It is felt. You know when to move. You know when to wait. And most importantly, you know when doing nothing is the most aligned action. This knowing is not learned. It emerges naturally when the emotional field stops interfering and the higher mind is allowed to guide. This is how the fifth dimension integrates, not as a destination reached, but as a mode of being sustained. And once this mode stabilizes, the ascension window no longer feels fragile. It feels present, not something you might miss, but something you are already standing within. As this clarity stabilizes within individuals, its effects begin to extend beyond the personal field. Not through effort, not through intention, but through presence. A coherent mind anchored in a regulated emotional field naturally influences the space around it. This influence is subtle but measurable. Interactions feel calmer, conversations slow, emotional escalation loses momentum. This is not because you are doing something to others. It is because coherence reorganizes the field it enters. In the fourth dimension, emotional turbulence spreads easily. Reaction invites reaction. Urgency multiplies. This is how collective instability sustains itself. But coherence behaves differently. It does not compete. It does not dominate. It does not resist. It stabilizes. This is why individual ascension and collective transition are not separate processes. Each emotionally coherent human reduces the overall density of the fourth-dimensional field. Each regulated nervous system makes the passage more accessible. This is how the Earth itself prepares for transition, not through mass awakening events, but through distributed stabilization. The planet does not require everyone to move at once. It requires enough coherence to hold a higher baseline without collapse. This is where many misunderstand the idea of the chosen. Selection is not external. It is functional. Those who can stabilize the emotional field allow the fifth-dimensional mind to anchor safely. These individuals naturally support the larger shift simply by existing in coherence. No leadership is required. No mission is assigned. Presence is sufficient. This also explains why chaos may still appear around you even as you feel more settled. The collective emotional field is uneven. Some areas stabilize while others resist. This does not negate the process, clarifies it. The transition is not uniform. It unfolds in waves, and each coherent individual becomes a quiet point of balance within that movement. This is not a burden. It is participation. Participation does not mean responsibility for others. It means responsibility for your own coherence. When you maintain presence in your emotional field, you are already contributing more than any action driven by urgency could. This is why pushing others to awaken rarely works. Pressure destabilizes. Example stabilizes. And stabilization is the language the fourth dimension understands. As more of this stability emerges, the fifth-dimensional mind finds more places to anchor. Not above the world, but within it. This is how the ascension window widens. Not by force, by accumulation of coherence. And this accumulation is already happening quietly, wherever awareness remains present long enough to guide emotion rather than be pulled by it. Nothing here needs to be rushed. The field responds to steadiness, and steadiness, once embodied, becomes contagious in the only way that truly matters, by making clarity feel safe. As the transition continues to mature, something subtle but decisive takes place inside you. The need for certainty begins to dissolve. In the third dimension, certainty is survival. You look for guarantees, explanations, structures that promise safety. In the fourth, certainty is sought emotionally, through reassurance, belonging, or validation. But in the fifth dimension, certainty is no longer required. Not because nothing matters, but because clarity replaces control. You may notice that questions which once felt urgent now feel unnecessary. Not because they were answered, but because the system no longer needs them to remain stable. Presence becomes enough. This is one of the clearest signs that the higher mind is anchoring. When the fifth-dimensional mind is present, it does not demand conclusions. It observes processes unfolding without anxiety. It trusts coherence more than prediction. This trust is not naive. It is grounded in the recognition that reality reorganizes itself when the emotional field is not interfering with fear or urgency. When reaction quiets, perception widens. And when perception widens, you can sense direction without needing proof. This is why many experience a period of not knowing during this phase. Not knowing does not feel threatening anymore. It feels open. You may find yourself acting without fully understanding why, saying no without justification, waiting without restlessness. These are not signs of confusion. They are signs of internal authority returning. Internal authority does not command. It listens. It listens to subtle signals, bodily sensations, emotional shifts, quiet intuitions, and responds without drama. This response is not impulsive. It is precise. Precision emerges when the mind is no longer overloaded by unresolved emotion. This is why the work of the fourth dimension was essential. Without emotional coherence, not knowing feels terrifying. With coherence, not knowing feels spacious. This spaciousness allows the fifth-dimensional mind to operate fully. It does not need to rush toward meaning. Meaning reveals itself naturally when perception is clear. You may also notice a softening of identity. Not loss, not confusion. Softening. Roles you once relied on no longer define you. Opinions feel less rigid. You are less invested in defending who you are. This is not disengagement. It is flexibility. Flexibility is a hallmark of higher consciousness. A rigid identity cannot adapt to a changing field, but a flexible one moves with reality without fracture. This flexibility does not make you passive. It makes you responsive. You act when alignment is present. You pause when it is not. And you no longer need external permission to trust this rhythm. This rhythm is the result of alignment between body, emotion, and mind. When these layers cooperate, ascension no longer feels like a goal. It feels like a natural orientation. You stop asking whether you are on the right path. The path feels present beneath your feet. This does not remove challenge. It removes confusion. Challenges are met directly, without internal argument. Emotions arise, move, and settle. Thought remains clear. Action follows without excess. This is the state that sustains the ascension window without effort. Not excitement, not anticipation, but quiet, grounded clarity. As this clarity deepens, you may sense that something fundamental has shifted, not around you, but within. You are no longer preparing. You are inhabiting. And inhabiting this state is what allows the transition to continue unfolding without collapse.